Yo guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I finally watched Superman. Alright, after what felt like an infinite wait, we can finally grace ourselves with Superman in movie theaters all around the world. Superman is the official start of the DC universe led by James Gunn. Not the official start, because it did start late last year with Creature Commandos, but this is the first movie in that universe and probably the first big thing out of the universe. I know Creature Commandos was big, but you know, it's Superman. Everybody knows the character, everybody knows about this movie coming out, and everyone has been talking about it. It has been the talk points for maybe the past year, considering the entire renewal of the DCU thing after James Gunn took over from Zack Snyder and directors like those. Alright, with that being said, I will not talk about the perception beforehand, I will not talk about anything else, I will just talk about my experience watching Superman, and I genuinely think my cats are getting crazy. Alright, so Superman is an absolute blast of a film. It has its weak points and it has things that do not really work that well at all, but the overall experience for this one is absolutely phenomenal and is really great. Let's talk about the most important thing for a Superman movie in my honest opinion, because as a character I really don't like Superman that much, not as a superhero at least. I do think he's way too overpowered. I do think there is no fun in watching someone who can do literally anything he wants. And I kind of don't buy it that the only real weakness that we know of is a green stone. With that being said, if you get the feeling and the vibe of the character right, you can totally overthrow that weakness of the character, in my opinion, of being too overpowered, because the big thing about Superman and the big thing that makes this character as great as he is the feeling of hope he portrays and the feeling of humanity. And I do have a feeling, and I do know for sure, for me personally, that feeling of hope and humanity was portrayed and brought to the screen perfectly in this movie. I think that I got everything that I wanted from a Superman movie, and I think I got every feeling that I wanted to feel out of it. This movie is about an outsider, about an alien, and it's about the repercussions of that, and about acceptance, and about the hope that this character can give. And I do think that this movie gives that feeling to the audience in pretty perfect ways, especially in its second half. That feeling is the entire vibe of it all, and that feeling is what holds this movie together so incredibly well. And most of that is also due to the portrayal and due to the performance by David Gordon Sweat as Superman, as Clark Kent, who does a phenomenal job as Superman. I personally think David Gordon Sweat is absolutely the new face for the new generation of Superman. I do think he cements himself in that role. I do think he was pretty damn fucking perfect in it. I do think he did a splendid job. I have to say that I can only say that for the Superman part. I think he had a great Clark Kent too, but this movie was mostly about Superman and not really about Clark Kent. So Clark Kent barely is in the movie. So there's too little of him for us to actually get an opinion on Clark Kent, on the character of Clark Kent. They talk a lot about the hypno glasses and stuff like that, and things that they have told about that. And you have some definitely good scenes with Clark Kent, especially one nearly in the beginning of the movie with Lois Lane, where they do some kind of interview. And that's really good, but that's almost everything of Clark Kent that you're gonna get in the movie is that one scene in the beginning that you also have seen in the trailers. Not entirely, but parts of it, and they've shown clips of it. And that's what you get with this movie. It's almost no Clark Kent, it's mostly Superman, but everything with Superman is great, everything with Clark Kent is good, but just not enough for us to vote on the character for. Like, how do we think of this portrayal of Clark Kent? We just haven't seen enough of that. David Gordon Sweat is awesome. Rachel Brosnahan, if I say that correctly, is also a fierce force. She is awesome. She is perfect in the role. I absolutely loved her, and everyone else in this entire movie does a really, really great job with their characters as well. I think Nicholas Hoult is perfect as this incredibly annoying villain that you really just want to see lose and really just want to see get punched in the face a lot, and I think he plays that part perfectly. I do think Guy Gardner, when he got cast in this movie and when I saw it in the trailer, like how he was being portrayed, I thought like, oh, slapstick. And I have to say, he had the best humor in this movie. He had the absolute best scenes humor-wise. He is a perfect translation from actor to character to James Gunn's humor splattered throughout. I think he does it perfectly. Mr. Terrific is awesome. Hawk Girl was portrayed very well. But what the fuck was she doing in this movie? I have no idea. She was just there. They could have cut her out of it and it would have been no difference. Metamorpho is also in this. He's fucking awesome. I absolutely love what they did with that character. I think that is some of the best emotional beats of this movie that the character has. So I loved that. And we have the family of Clark Kent, of course. They're also in here. They're also barely present, but when they are, they nail it. And I do think James Gunn uses humor in this movie way too much. And I do think most of the humor, for once, in a James Gunn movie really doesn't work that well. And a lot of emotional moments in this movie are overshadowed by crappy jokes that don't really work that well. And that's something that really annoyed me. But with the family scenes, I do think they absolutely nailed the emotional weight of those scenes. And I think that absolutely is the best scene in the movie. Somewhere around the start of the third act, where whenever Clark Kent went back to the family, there's something happening over there, and he gets told something by the parent figures, and it works perfectly. And that's the scene that almost made me cry. It's such an emotional scene, and I loved that James Gunn took his time for that scene. I do think they could have done it a little bit more, and I do think that the humor outweighs the emotional moments a little bit too much in this one. This one has a lot of slapstick humor that really isn't needed for it. I mean, I guess they wanted to make a lighter version of Superman after we got the incredibly dark DC extended universe, with Man of Steel being incredibly dark, being inspired by movies like The Dark Knight, which I get, which is awesome in its own way. I absolutely think that Man of Steel is a great portrayal of Superman. It's just not the most comic accurate version of Superman, but I do think it's a good version of that as well. This one, absolutely comic book accurate, absolutely in every scene. Like, this is just, it feels like a comic book come to life, and I love it. There are some other things though that are worth mentioning, as I do think the story for this one is quite weak. And that comes as both a blessing and a curse. It comes as a blessing because of the themes, because of the theme of hope and of humanity. I think those themes are, as I told you before, put to the screen perfectly. But they did come with just a story that has been splattered from moment to moment to moment, just for them to create that feeling of hope for us. And I do not feel like there is a big, giant, great cohesive story going on in this movie. I feel like it's just brackets that they wrote together for stuff like that, and for a third act, and they had to finish this up, and there was some things like, okay, how are we going to go from there to there, or let's just do that. It feels very sloppy. It feels a bit choppy, especially in the first half of the movie. So it comes as a blessing because the themes are being put to screen perfectly because of that, but the story feels choppy, and that's both the curse, because in the first half of this movie, I just wasn't loving it. I liked the characters, I liked the portrayal, I liked everything apart from the story, and the story annoyed me a little bit. But then going into the second half, it all worked for the better, and I do think it also is both a blessing and a curse that they chose to write the story like this. Like, superheroes or metahumans have been in this world for a couple of centuries right now, and I do think that is a great idea. I do love the idea that they are not entirely rebooting Superman, that they're not retelling that origin story, for the gazillionth time. I do think having a seasoned Superman is great for this movie. It makes sure that you can tell a different story, a different approach, apart from just doing the origin again. Like, they can do whatever they want, and I have a feeling that they absolutely nailed those themes as well, just by having Superman doing good and not understanding the politics and everything else surrounding it, as in his eyes he's just doing good. He's keeping people from killing other people, and I loved that scene, and I loved everything. And that's what I mean with both a blessing and a curse, because the themes are great, the story is choppy, but they made it work in the end. And I do think, even though the story is a bit choppy, Isabella Merced didn't have a lot to do, and some other things weren't really working that well, but the overall product, most of the characters, and absolutely every performance made sure, together with that feeling of hope, with that feeling of humanity, and with the feeling that I ended up leaving the theater with, is making sure that this is indeed a great start to the DC universe. I do think this one is awesome. It's the first movie, but it also already feels like a giant interconnected movie that plays in an entire universe, and I can absolutely applaud James Gunn for doing that. The humor isn't always as well placed as it could have been, and it sometimes, or most of the times, wasn't even that necessary for making a lighter Superman. I just genuinely think that this portrays hope, humanity, and fun in the best way possible, and I do think James Gunn absolutely nailed it out of the park with this one. It's a great start to the DC universe, and it makes me excited to see what follows next month with Peacemaker Season 2 already. What did you think of Superman? Please let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to end up giving this one 4 stars and a heart. Please let me know what you thought. I am genuinely excited to see your opinion on it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, and bye-bye.